record stuff not under more. Okay. So for those of us who just joined us, we are recording. However, because there will be ID numbers visible throughout, I will not be making this publicly available on YouTube. You can request it if you need to look at the recording, and I will individually send the link. So a little bit of background. I yes. I don't remember when it was, but Will at Peninsula came to me and we were I'm working on it, Tracy. There we go. And you had found some duplicate users and we were like, what's going on with this? And then some of the users were not currently enrolled and we were trying to sort it out. But in that search, we noticed that some of the user numbers had a prefix of XF. And we didn't understand why or what was going on with that. Fast forward, however long it's been since that conversation, to the LLC meeting on Thursday last week. And the Canvas integration guy from the state board came to visit and made a throwaway comment about tagged primary identifiers for fraudulent users. And he said, yeah, at the CTC, level, we tag fraudulent users with this XF prefix to their user ID. Let me just say, this is a terrible practice for data management because that primary ID is the match point for every single downhill system from CTC Link. So why they decided to do that and not add a tag somewhere that could be pulled and filtered on, I don't know. But that's part of the discussion that hopefully we can talk about today. But him saying that triggered my memory of, oh, well, crud. That's what we were seeing in Peninsula. So I real quick jumped into analytics and knowing that we'd found them in Peninsula, created this report. So it's just a user report with primary identifier, what the expiration date is, and then I don't know why I kept first name in here. And then full name. And you can see for Peninsula, there are only 2 in the system currently. Other schools have significantly more. And then some schools have none. My suspicion is that the schools that have none, the conversion script that is taking your data link file is filtering out primary identifiers that don't fit with the standard 9-digit numerical primary identifier. So it is just filtering out anyone with this XF tag. Unfortunately, the way that Alma works is like that XF isn't going to update this ID number. So if we come back in and search Alex Holland, we can see we have this internal and an external. The internal has the XF, has an expiration date. Yeah, and since Will and I investigated this, we kind of we're like, what's going on? But the problem is, when we go back and check this external one still has a January expiration date. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Sorry, household stuff. Okay. So we have the situation where, yes, CTC Link has tagged the fraudulent users, but Alma has no idea because that primary identifier is the match point, and now we have duplicates. So if you have the XFs in your system, which you can determine by accessing the user accounts flagged as fraudulent, you can export this list. And I'm trying to figure out a good way to do it. And I could kind of work through that today with you all in here if you want to do it individually. Because I think I have a solution, but you can go in and basically find the other not XF tagged one and also turn that to internal and change the expiration date so that both of the users' accounts match. However, I think it would be extremely helpful if we kind of developed a best practice for doing that. So like, okay, you run this report. Maybe we can create an analytics object that will show when a new XF user tag gets uploaded to your system. You then turn both primary identifiers to internal, and then what block or note will we put on this as a collective? Because I think it would be absolutely awesome if there was a standard blocker note, because then I could run those reports from a standard analytics and share with CTC Link as to what's going on. The second part of this is, so the schools that don't have these XF tagged users, I think still have the fraudulent accounts without the SF tag in their systems. So how do we talk to our CTC Link script writers, and what do you want to ask them to do? Like, and this may be a short-term and long-term thing. Like in the short term, those of you who have the XF tag, you figure it out, you know, like block both versions. Those of you that don't, we ask the script to not limit the primary identifier format by the 9-digit numericals, so you can start to get those, so you can block them. But in the long term, I'm pretty sure I need to go to CTC Link and they need to come up with a new way to tag fraudulent users in the system. And then that has to come down to how your individual IT departments work with those records and report them back into the system.
It would be helpful to find out more from CTC Link about when they say this is a fraudulent account, what do they mean? I know,
Yeah,
like,
there's that
during
element as
lockdown, there
well.
was the RE resources person ran across a whole bunch of accounts that, from what we could tell, had been created specifically for people to take scholarship money and loan money and then vanish. So these weren't people who were ever going to be on site, try to come on campus. So we didn't have a high need to get them out of the library system. Like it wasn't an immediate need. It was, it was good to get
Right,
rid of
because
them,
they
but
weren't
we,
going to necessarily come in and check out a laptop and walk off.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
we encounter this at Bellevue a lot. There's a lot of fraudulent students at Bellevue. In fact, there was a couple of classes. If you look at our course catalog, if it's at the beginning of the alphabet and it's a class with no prerequisites like Anthropology 101 or something like that, they found that many of those classes were like 85% were fake students. Now, my husband works for IT at Bellevue, and there are lots and lots and lots of different things that they look at. They look at where the students connect from, where they say they physically reside. More often than not, they physically reside either at a place that makes no sense, like a field in the middle of nowhere, or a house that's recently been sold, and so it's easy to find that address. And then they do look at registrations and things like that. I have to say, I don't know if Bellevue tags with that XF thing. I've asked my husband because he could tell me right off the top of his head, but I know he works with our registration folks to determine, because at Bellevue, I think they have lots of access
This.
to neat things that they want, like
Mhm.
server
My
access and things.
understanding, and from what I could tell, so Amy, I created this user report. It's in the catalog under our Whack to Click consortium folder, and it's in my Carly's tests because I was seeing how much I could kind of make it useful. But it's just called user accounts flagged as fraudulent. My understanding was that this XF tag is the current CTC link practice across all
Okay.
colleges. So I can get out of Peninsula
Yeah.
and we can like Seattle doesn't have any. Who else didn't have any? Pierce had some. Because I specifically was like, nope, I've seen those in Pierce.
Oh yeah, we have them.
So let's see if they're getting passed into Bellevue's Alma or not.
Yeah, his answer, he believes it's a field within CTC link rather than added to the student ID. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that it
Nothing
then
like
is
Bellevue to do it our own way. Yeah, that's
behaving.
us. That's us in a nutshell.
Okay, where am I?
Yes, and our analytics reports are very specific, like where is that thing I ordered? Just because, hey, it makes it easy.
Okay, so users.
Yeah, we don't have any.
Yeah, so I'm guessing.
If they've added it, it's to a different field than the
Well,
ID. That's what IT
no,
is saying.
right, but then are those then if they're not adding it to primary identifier, does your script use that tag and eliminate them from your patron load?
I don't know.
Yeah, because sure, it could totally be a tag in a field, but then if they're not filtering based on that field and they're just loading currently enrolled students into Alma, you're getting all of those fraudulent students.
Right. And I know IT does some blocking, but I don't exactly know what that entails.
Yeah, so it may, like, if your local IT is blocking those students in like Okta or whatever, they may not be able to sign into the account to access remote resources. But if someone came into the library, you
Right.
wouldn't necessarily have any idea, and they could check out a laptop or a bunch of books or whatever and walk off. Do I
Yeah.
think this is some considerable problem? Probably not, but at the same time, it's very indicative of how the state level CTC link doesn't understand the systems that are relying on the data,
Right.
and why we need oh, sorry, this last name is not equal to library because
Oh, last name is not library. Yeah.
because a bunch of people use in one of the things I found, one of the libraries was using XF for ILL.
Oh, weird.
Um,
We don't, but yeah.
yeah, and so, but all of the last names were library.
Ah,
So
okay.
not a big deal. I can get rid of that one. I was just kind of, and yeah, again,
Yeah.
not
Okay.
a Bellevue problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do know that students who are identified as fraudulent, and there's lots and lots of things that they do. They lock their account, and the students
Does
are
anyone want
very,
me to run
they're
it?
very, they're very aggressive. They call our help desk and say, "Why has my access been denied?" And it's like, "Well, you've never taken a class." "Oh, well, I'm going to take a class next quarter," which of course we've all heard that. So and I kind of just tangentially hear this stuff, but it is quite a thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's good. So BTC has one. I think Pierce had like 8 or 9. But yeah, so I'd love more than anything just today to figure out how you want to deal with it, just so that I can help monitor it. So if it is consistent, so yeah, Pierce had quite a few. Yeah, so you can see this is their library ones. Uh, but and luckily most of these have already expired. So it's like not a big deal. But there is still one. So I suspect, there's only depending on your population, maybe a couple every quarter. And if you're doing if your expiration dates aren't set out too far in the future, even the external versions without the XF are not in the system for very long. But yeah. But my thought was, as far as like creating, because I was trying to figure out a way in analytics to kind of like find these people and then their other accounts. And so I was trying to do a secondary analytics report that matched on full name, and so then like, oh, it'll show this primary identifier and the untagged one. But unfortunately, particularly with Hispanic names, there were in fact multiple people with the same names. Jennifer at Green River asked if I could send the list of XF accounts, or let you know if there are no XF students in Alma. I could certainly kind of run the report for everybody, because I think that's going to be a useful piece of information that I need to take back to CTC Link. So I have no problem kind of doing that. What I was going to do was export the formatted Excel and then use a text to okay.
Text
Verify close.
columns. Woo!
Yeah. And
I was
get
just going to suggest that.
and then get the user numbers and then paste those into an analytics account and then create a set from that search. And basically create a set of the fraudulent users that you could then do a bulk change on. But I was like, then again, if you only have one that's not expired, is it worth that much work, or do you just, copy and paste? Well, I could rather than email those reports, I could PDF and save them in the Google Drive and send individual links to the documents to each of you. Because that way I have them saved in one place. And I have a folder that's like my FERPA folder where I am very cautious about any links I'm sharing and permissions. But yeah, so Skagit Valley, no XF students, then you need to figure out how to get the list of students with that CTC tag, because your CTC link is not importing them into Alma. Yes, potentially. That is what I suspect is happening. If your IT departments can run a report of who they've tagged, like in the last year, depending on what your expiration. If your expiration is end of quarter, you would, you'd kind of have to, I'm guessing they identify students throughout the quarter and get them tagged. So you might need to just work on a workflow with your IT, like, hey, if you tag someone as fraudulent, the library needs to know, because we're not necessarily going to get that data otherwise. So yeah, that could be one way, is just having them tell you when they find someone if you're not currently getting them into Alma. You might also want to just, of course, our library blocks are far less difficult to remove than the CTC link blocks. So I'm not really worried if we, if you expire or block the fraudulent users and then it comes back like, nope, that was an IT mistake. It's relatively easy to fix that if, the student contacts you and you can confirm. I mean, it's a whole thing, right? It just kind of blows my mind that this was the solution that CTC Link came up with. Because yeah, the entire system is premised on this single match point, and you've now changed the match point. So yeah, I'm going to start a document, and that can be, see, this is my service manager not sharing things, one where I can put FERPA data, and then and this is the absolute mess that is the current member resources folder. And until I clean it up a little more, I'm not resharing it. So some of the individual folders are shared. If you need something, let me know. So let's start with the if you have XF tagged so for those of you that do, I see a couple options, like turning both the XF and like quote normal primary identifier to internal, and adding a block would be one way you could deal with it, because if the account is internal, the user load will no longer be able to update that information. You could turn the non-XF one to, I'm trying to think, because like if an XF user gets updated, it could be updated with important information like an address that you would want to use for collections. But again, our libraries aren't doing collections themselves,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and if the account has been tagged as fraudulent, that address is invalid. Like that is the
Right,
address
it's
may
probably
exist,
not.
but the
Yeah.
person is not there.
So I think making it internal, changing the expiration date, and adding some kind of block note, and if we can like all agree on a real basic block note text that I can then filter one. Yeah, something as straightforward and obvious as CTC link account flagged as fraudulent. Thank you, Kirsty. Okay, so we're gonna say internal, and then expire them. And then where is, from a managing users and circulation fulfillment perspective, just gonna, oh, well, that's XF. There we go. So we have this one, and oh, I guess I could just put it in quotation marks and I wouldn't come up with the libraries at Pierce. So say we go into this account, if we add a block and we add it, how do
You
we
have to
best
create
think?
a block in configuration.
Okay,
And
so
everybody who wants to add the block is gonna have to do this
do that.
in their own
It looks like you
system.
can import a file. So if we can develop one file and you could disseminate the file to all of us, maybe
For the block.
for the block. Yep.
Because the other thing I'm thinking is if they're already expired, can we just add a note and have it be a pop-up note, not a user viewable note? Because then we could just say
the block you can assign through a job. I don't know if you can add a pop-up note to a whole bunch of
with it.
to a whole bunch of accounts at the same time with a job. George, do you?
I've done that before.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
So do we think it's useful to go ahead and create a block type, which I can create and send out so that you can run the job on a set of users?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So add block, and then our block type will be a new one developed centrally and shared out. And I am, of course, also willing to add the block types to your configuration. Yeah, and this is the other issue is like, so if a student gets tagged as fraudulent, but they are a real student, they have to go to the registrar. How are they then changing that account, and how does it end up changing in Alma? That's why I'm thinking we leave the untagged account as external, but add a block to it, because that way, if CTC Link updates their information, like maybe they entered their address wrong, or maybe, like there was some kind of mistake, things get updated with their user account. The external account can get updated, but if we have a block and a pop-up, then you have the ability to, if they come in, check with IT and say, hey, is this still a fraudulent or did it get fixed? Do you think that? Yeah, okay, good. Because I'm like, this is so complicated and I don't want to make too much extra work for our CERC folks, and I want to make it really obvious, but not inconvenience our real students. So we're gonna have a pop-up note. So I'm gonna say internalize. Yeah. Well, and the Canvas guy is the one who brought it up. So I was going to reach back out to him after we chatted to ask how Canvas is dealing with it. But I'm not sure. I think they may be going back to Okta. And if the tag is blocking them from Okta, then it's not necessarily relevant. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, the expiry date for external will get updated if that one remains in the data load, which is why adding the block to all related accounts is important, because that block will be what keeps the associated untagged primary identifier from accessing library services, but at least is easy to remove. And yeah. Tracy?
When I ran the report for BTC, it
Mhm.
had the same person, the same name. One had the XF, one didn't. And they were both external accounts. I checked the expiration date, they were both the same. So what would you do in that instance?
So, if their expiration date is still like in the future, I would expire them. So set their expiration date to today. Make the tagged XF account internal, and then add a pop-up block note to both accounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this whole thing in Sandbox with a totally fake student and totally fake information, so that I can do screenshots and do a video, and like have it all set up.
And Carly, it might be good too to have sort of two sets of instructions. So one is if you only have a small number,
Yeah, versus a larger number.
and you're able to do this one account at a time, versus you've just discovered that you have 100 of these
Well,
accounts.
and
Look at fraudulent accounts.
And luckily, the spot checks that I've been doing, the only college that has multiple is unfortunately Centralia, and that has more to do with the way that their load was working up until this spring. So most of theirs are expired in March, but I'll show you the worst of it. But I don't think I found more than 20 or 30 anywhere.
So one comment on the instructions, also break it into one section of here's what to do with the accounts that have the XF in them. Here's how to find the duplicate account and what to do with those.
What to do with XF account? And then
And then how
find
to use
related
find the
untagged account. Add blocked. Okay. And then if you don't have the XF tags, I think Elena's idea of talking with your IT and getting a report.
Great minds think alike, Elena. That was my plan too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm gonna flush this out significantly and create a whole thing in the sandbox. Will Peninsula, so this was where it all started. So he's emailing his CTC Link IT admin to verify that the student is fraudulent because the record looks legitimate. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that an account gets tagged as XF because something is a little off. The student comes back, talks to the registrar, they get it sorted out. And then because of the way our loads work, there is still an XF account and there is still a regular account. And that's why I don't want to do anything to the untagged accounts that's too permanent, and why I want you to leave them external. Because adding a pop-up note block will hopefully give your team the ability to then check in with IT and find out what's going on. It might not be terribly convenient for the student, but until we can figure out a better communication system between CTC Link and Alma, like, we just have to kind of rely on what's coming in every day. Yeah, tis goofy. Ryan Decker able to create a report in analytics that shows both the accounts of the XF prefix and the matching accounts without. Ooh, okay. You can put it in the shared, or I can just move it into the shared. But let's check it out, Ryan. Okay, and I'm gonna boop de goop and log out. And reports. Okay. Cool. Magic. Oh, okay, yeah. So you just filtered on, yeah. I didn't even think to see if that would work. So now we've got, see, and like, you've got these where it's like, yeah, there's no capitalization, like, those are a little, yeah, a little more telling. Yeah, so
is
that's
that
great.
Actually, two reports. So it's one report of the
No, this is
XF
both.
accounts and then
because what, oh yeah, so you're basing it on user accounts flagged as fraudulent.
So
Yes.
so you need to move both
Mhm.
accounts into the shared folder.
Mhm.
Sorry, not both reports.
And this, like, so I also did this, and the only problem was at Pierce, they had multiple, I think it was, like Maria Fernandez. So there's still a little bit of filtering that you had to just visually do, because the full name was in fact duplicated. But for most schools, I'm guessing that this will work quite well. And it looks like you guys only have one currently unexpired. And I think that's, like, that's why, like, while I wanted to discuss this as soon as possible, I also don't feel like it is a, like, 5 alarm problem, because theoretically these accounts get flagged as fraudulent. They're no longer able to, like, access whatever it was in the system that they wanted to be able to access. They don't fake enroll in Anthropology 101 again, and they kind of expire after 1 quarter. But you've got 1 quarter where someone could walk in and check out a laptop and walk back out again. And we've got enough legitimate students doing that. We don't need to add, like, actual bad actors into the mix. So, yeah, so that double filtering, I can add both into the shared drive, so that you can see yours. Like I said, I don't think that's a big enough issue with the, like, duplicate full name. Right. And I think, like, some of the legitimate students are getting tagged fraudulent for some reason. I would be very curious to like, well, because I'm a staff number, it's probably not going to happen, but I, like, applied at Pierce. And I'm also a continuing ed student at Spokane Falls, so I have like, institution level accounts at multiple schools, and I wonder if, like, IT ever looks and is like, why the heck is this account in here? But no one's tagged me as fraudulent yet. It was just a little test of the system. So I think a pop-up block is easy enough to remove, should a legitimate student end up getting tagged, and then it gets fixed, because then their untagged account should get updated with a new expiration date, new addresses, and any other criteria that your Alma load is bringing in. And then, yeah. So I think there's a lot that it makes sense for me to just do one time instead of you guys having to each do individually. And um and again, like, it's just going to be a slowly working through this short-term solution versus long-term solution. And if CTC Link is going to continue to use this SF tag, then we might need to have a more strategic discussion. But maybe we can talk to them somehow and then figure out how this script can, I don't know, because this kind of goes hand in hand with if an employee has separated from the institution, our data loads don't always reflect that. I don't think anyone has a real good, you've been fired and now you're removed, like you just get removed from the data load. It's not the account isn't updated to be like, nope, expire this person. So separated employees may have access to library resources, depending on what your settings are, up to a year after separating from the institution. So that's another conversation that I'm trying to have with CTC Link. How can we write scripts that would update those user accounts to expire them if they have separated? And it has to do with like pulling a separation date, which means adding a whole nother report just to get that field and yada, 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 yada. Right. It would be excellent. So yeah, I will work on this. It's not going to be an overnight thing. But I'll definitely bring the progress to the next open call. And I'll run reports and start saving the reports and then sending individual links to my normal contacts at each of your schools, so that you know whether or not you have any of these. But I appreciate all of the feedback and thinking behind this. Yeah, zombie staff and faculty. I was like, if you can't laugh about it, I don't know what we'll do. So it was just, this is an example of, if we didn't have someone in the LLC meeting to hear that throwaway comment, would they ever think to tell our library what was going on? That's good that Shoreline's getting updated personnel changes. I know Pierce struggles. Like Victoria noticed that she moved quite some time ago and updated her address everywhere in the system that she can access, and yet the data load that's coming in from CTC Link to the library still has the old address. And yes, and when I have the recording available, I will also I'll share the links to emails, not to the listserv, since that listserv is public. Yeah, John Davis at Seattle is the script guru. And I just don't know how we can translate what he's doing to everybody, but when someday we do that, I want that for everybody. Yeah, somebody is tracking it, so it should be able to be loaded. You're absolutely right, Isaac, and that's kind of the problem, is that all of this information exists, and for some reason the people that are making it exist are not thinking of how it needs to flow to the users of the data. So I hope to leverage our collective voices to illustrate this problem out to the greater community so we can get a fix. And in the meantime, I will write up these instructions of how to deal with the accounts that you find in your own systems, and make these resources available as securely as possible, so that we can deal with it. So good times. It's a good project. I'm very happy to be able to work collectively on it for you. So, all right. Well, I think our next open call is next week. I'm working on a website stuff. Because we have an ITC meeting this week, so I'll be sitting in with them and see if I can bring it up then. So next week we actually have another Hein Online demo because I was able to get that information out to the Library Leadership Council last week. So Tuesday there's another Hein Online, no meeting this Thursday because I'll be in ITC meeting. And then next Thursday will be an open call. So I'll bring the update to this. And I'm also hoping to have Primo, the new Discovery experience updates, as well as November release notes, since we primarily only talked about Alma release notes last time. So yeah, no meeting this Thursday. Next Tuesday is Hein Online demo. And next Thursday, we will have the open call at 1 p.m. So please, keep reminding me if you need stuff, and I'll be working on getting this stuff together for your teams so we can deal with this. So thanks a lot for being here and contributing today. Have a great week.